Well, hello, ladies, gentlemen, and everyone in between. I am Diana Clary and the Lavender Lady. How the heck are ya? Oh my, this was to have been a second cup of coffee on Sunday, but my guest was a little bit under the weather, and I thought I'd be nice to her and let her do some recovering. And she's with me today, and in the wake of the sudden and tragic death of Cy Strike, um, I thought I'd like to talk about grieving at a distance. There is the well known phenomenon of relationships at a distance. Friendships at a distance are becoming ever more common. But what about when somebody leaves your company? What happens then when that's at a distance? And Shannon, how you doing? Shannon Q is with us to talk about that. And don't mind her squeaking. She's just,
I'm very squeaky and I'm sorry.
And I
I
think
don't
we might start
feel
out with
so good.
something. It may be a stupid question, but maybe not. What is grief?
What is grief? Like, when you say what is grief, do you mean like from a psychological
Yeah,
perspective?
definitely. Yeah. We all know what it feels like, but I don't
Yeah,
know if it has a definition.
that's something I could have looked up ahead of time, to be perfectly honest with you. Unfortunately, I didn't have time to do so, so I'm so sorry about that. But based on my
You
understanding of it,
Canadian.
I know. I'm sorry. So I can't stop myself from saying sorry, apparently. It's just like comes out involuntarily. Um, Grief, from my understanding of it, and this isn't a technical definition, would be the the emotional state of coming to terms with the permanent absence of someone or something that was of value or importance in your life, and the reconciliation of what that means for your life going forward into the future, and the steps that are involved in reconciling that.
Okay, now that process, if I have it correct, and please correct me if I'm wrong, is usually thought of as a group effort. Uh, One has people around oneself with whom one can grieve, or is this? Am I full of it?
I don't think that you're full of it. I think from a social perspective, we organize group activities around the grieving process. So we have wakes, we have funerals, we have memorials, we have different sort of ceremonies where we can all commiserate. And I think a lot of that has to do with the fact that we feel emotional support from other people in those scenarios where we're commiserating and remembering. It helps to solidify our perception and memory of the person. If you care very much about the person, it's important to uh, to make sure that their memories are honored as a part of the process. Their memory, I should say, is honored as a part of the process, and who they were is presented and honored. And it's also very important, just as humans in general, when you're going through traumatic experiences, to be able to reach out to people and be heard so that you can help organize your thoughts. So, yeah, I think there's a social aspect to it, but ultimately, as with any emotional process, there's a lot of components to it that you're going to have to grapple with on your own, because nobody else can experience what you experience in your mind, right?
And that's where I was kind of wondering when your very dear friend, for example,
Mm.
suddenly dies, but that death takes place 400 miles away from you and tens of thousands of miles away from many of the people who knew and loved that person. What differences or similarities, for that matter, are there to the standard grieving process? You know, where you're having these rituals with people down the street or in the same household, that sort of thing. Now, if there is anyone at all, they're halfway around the world. You know, what differences do we have to deal with, and how do we do that?
Sometimes proximity, lack of proximity means lack of access, especially when you're looking at things like time zones, for example. So if somebody lived another town over from you, or a couple of doors down from you, or in the same town as you, and you're used to seeing each other in in a social setting where you're face to face and you're within physical proximity to each other in the same building, same domicile. Pardon me. Sorry about. So sorry about my voice. You're used to going to the same places and doing things together. You're gonna just organically have more access to that person during a time like this, and it'll allow you to feel supported because they knew the person as well. If somebody isn't proximal to you, that access becomes a little bit more difficult because they may not always be readily available to you, which could be the case for somebody that's close to you as well. They may not always be readily available to you. And I think one of the important things that you would have to look at in those scenarios is what support looks like for you. And that answer is going to be different to a lot of different people. So a lot of the dissonance in the grieving process and things that may hold it up might have to do with, and this transitions through, I think, to a lot of things in life in general, is expectations not being met regarding what you anticipate somebody is going to do in a situation, or a group of people are going to do in a situation involving you. So in any process like this, when you're reaching out for support, you have an expectation of what that's going to look like to the person that you're reaching out to, and that can be based on what has been happened to you in the past and how you felt supported. That can be based on how you've interacted with that person. That can be based on what you predict that person might do based on how you feel your relationship has been established. And if those expectations aren't met, that can feel hard. And if through a grieving process you feel as though you need a little bit more support and you don't have access to those people, or you aren't as close to those people in a social manner, like if you're unified around like a common goal or an ideology, or if you're unified around like a subject matter, for example, or even that person was the linchpin that unified you, those relationships become more difficult to evaluate. So I think it would have to do with what you need, like what your expectations are of a person, whether or not you're going to garner any benefit from those previous relationships in a grieving process. And you also have to keep in mind that those people are likely grieving too and may also need support and not have the bandwidth to provide it as well. Does that make sense? That's a lot to.
Yeah, to me it does make a good bit of sense, especially that last one. Do you have the bandwidth to do something like that? There may be somebody who needs a 6 or 8 hour conversation with somebody, and
Yeah.
can you manage to maintain that over the wire? Um, and I guess one thing I might also look for is, do we always necessarily have the bandwidth in proximity? I mean, are there those situations where, as I think you alluded to earlier, you might be right down the street from another person who is grieving for this particular person, or right across the street, and yet cannot reach out? I mean, are there some cases of grieving alone, even in the midst of others?
Oh, I would certainly say so.
And
Absolutely.
what do you do about that?
About grieving alone.
Yeah.
Grief is an intensely difficult and very individualistic thing. So for me, like, I can speak towards myself and I could use myself as an example. And I'm not saying that this is a model example or the best example, but when I grieve, I tend to initially go into crisis mode of, okay, well, I need to fix this and take care of everything that needs to be taken care of. I go into, I need to be the strong one for everybody else. I need to enact things so that, I'll take care of this part. I'll take care of this part. I'll do this. You need me. I'll be the person to talk to. So I occupy myself with tasks for a little while. And then once all of those tasks dissipate, like once the pomp and circumstance of the moment is over, and people kind of go back to their corners, and all of the arrangements and things that need to be done are done, that I will have a mental collapse at that point by myself. I have to do that in a very solitary way. I don't have a comfort level that allows me to do that with other people. And I've learned that about myself. I've tried to do it with other people, thinking that that's, what I must need. I must need other people because I feel hopeless. And in those situations, you want to reach out. But I've learned that that's a moment in time that I just have to allow myself to implode so that I can get to the other side of it. I just have to realize that it's something that I can get through, and I will get through, and it's going to suck, but I have to get through it. After that, I start to feel a little bit better and mostly reach out for tiny increments of support as they come up when they're needed. And that support is in conversations about that person, and continuing on them being a part of my life through their memory. Now, that's just me, but I recognize that a part of that is something that I have to do by myself. Somebody else watching me implode doesn't stop me from imploding, and I need to implode.
Yes. Do I ever know that one?
Right. So I think that there is a solitary part of it in the fact that, like, you can't, when you're grieving, and shouldn't attempt to stop the negative feelings. And we want to stop negative feelings, right? But they can't be. Sometimes you just have to let them all wash over you. But I'm not everybody, though. And some people may need somebody there with them to feel okay. And if you're far away and you don't have somebody to be physically there with you, and it becomes incredibly difficult, there are crisis lines that you can call just to have that person present for your comfort level. But if not, if you have that relationship with somebody who's farther away, maybe, test that relationship. It might suck, because you might test that relationship and find out it wasn't what you thought it was, and that can hurt too, because then you're risking feeling abandoned on top of grieving.
Yeah.
Right. And it's difficult, and those things will happen, but it's a bit more difficult when it's further away. For those reasons. What aspects of it did you want to hit on or feel are the most complex?
I suppose it's the various feelings that people have if they've got no one to cry to, for example.
Right.
Or if they're... That's the big one, to have no one to be around, and you're going through this by yourself. Can memorials on air, for example, help? Or sometimes is there still something just totally missing? And something else is, this is going to be really strange, for the first time griever, if you will, something I noticed when Jeff died, it hit me like nothing ever did. No family member, even. I love my Bobcat dearly, but you couldn't hear me crying down the block when she died. Then there are the people I refer to as those two. You heard the cheering down the block when I found out they were dead. So this, when Jeff died, it was a totally new experience to me. And how many people experience that different levels of grief and are surprised by it? um, someone who was, so dear to you that it just destroys your entire world for a few days anyway. And what do you do with something like that?
You have to walk through it, and that's a horrible, shitty thing. That you have to walk through it. Because grief is one of those things that there's nothing that can objectively fix it, because that person's absence is always going to be there, and that person's absence is what has brought on the grief. Now, there's a couple of questions there to address. So I'll start at the initial question, which was, I think, online memorials. Like, do they do anything?
Yeah.
Okay, so the answer to that question would be, what do in-person memorials do that an online memorial doesn't? Now, aside from the physical proximity to the people, if the point of the memorial is for people that love and care about this person to gather together to honor them and support each other, or to memorialize that person, they both serve that purpose. So I guess, is there something that you feel like an in-person memorial does that an online memorial does not? That's maybe a better question to get at
Yeah.
it.
And I think you've touched on it. It's that physical proximity to other people who knew and loved the departed, if you want to put it that way. Okay, I'm very much about interpersonal, even to the effect of the hugs, the literal hand holding, that sort of thing, that maybe a lot of people don't.
Hmm.
And for those of us like that, what are the things that we can do to get
What?
by, or besides just simply suck it up and say, hey, we're going through this alone? Because I'm sure
Okay.
there are more people out there. I'm not the only one who needs that, who needs the people around, sitting Shiva, if you will.
Right.
I got a laugh out of Neil, the 604 atheist, when he said, "Oh, you know our terms." I said, "Yep."
So if you feel as though, not just physical proximity, but like actual physical affection in a scenario is something that's a requirement to get through, that's difficult for a couple of reasons. First reason is that, nobody can ever really compel anybody to be comfortable with physical contact, but that is difficult if you're somebody who needs physical contact, because nobody can change that about you either, right?
Yeah, indeed.
And there's
Yeah,
nothing wrong with it. It's completely natural to want to have that endorphin release and want to have that physical contact with somebody, especially when you need it, and just feel cared for. I like a hug. I'm a hugger. Ask everybody who met me at Faithless Forum. I hugged everybody. Everybody let me hug them. I hugged them all. I'm a hugger.
I'll
So
keep that in mind if I make
I
it
have
down there for the next one, and if I see you
yeah.
there.
Jimmy made me ask permission. Mr. Atheist told me I had to ask permission for hugging, so I asked permission now. But most people say it's okay. But yeah. So I'm not sure I have a really good answer for that, because it's just not something that you can do. I think a good answer for a lot of things is introspective meditation. If you can do some sort of relaxation meditation, where you're actually focusing on calming sounds. And I know that sounds bananas to some people, but there's a neurological reason why that's a good thing to do in these instances, because you tend to spike a lot of neurochemicals like acetylcholine during that time, because your fight or flight response essentially kicks in. Like your amygdala says, danger, this is bad. And your body goes into that overdrive. And one of the reasons that a hug feels really good at that point is a hug will release positive endorphins that help, regulate that and increase dopamine levels. The same effect can be achieved to a certain degree without the physical contact through contemplative relaxation meditation. So that's something that's worth a try, uh, to not replace that, because there isn't any real replacement, but to fill in as a proxy for it, I would say.
Yeah, I see that Wonder Lady has the very poignant very poignant comment. There we
Okay.
are, which is something I've said many times as well. Death traditions are for the living, not the dead.
Yeah, I'm
And
completely agree.
this is one of the reasons that I have all the questions. It's where what's gone on over the last couple of weeks has really got me thinking about it. I had never thought of this before. And
Mm.
I don't know if anyone else has thought about it. Well, I did see a few things when I was trying to do a little bit of research. Do you know of very much that's being talked about, researched, that sort of thing the uh, in the realm of online, not online, in the realm of long distance grieving? I'm thinking that there have been things done about long distance love or long distance friendships.
Yeah,
But has anybody really looked at long distance grief?
I'm not really sure. I did briefly look when you suggested this to me through Google Scholar just to have a look, and I didn't see anything really. So I'm not sure if it's something like us having these sort of social yet sort of also pseudo parasocial relationships that become incredibly important and valuable parts of our lives is a relatively new phenomena, like chronologically through the history of the species, right?
Right. It's
So
only been within the last what, maybe 15 years
yeah,
that
really.
the concept of a long distance friendship could really become realized. Now I know that
Right.
I grew up in the era of pen pals,
Uh,
and I do know that there were some people who formed very close friendships by means of paper sent back and forth between continents. But you didn't hear or see that as often as you see the online friendships, the long distance friendships now. I mean, almost everybody I know has at least one long distance friend on another continent with whom they speak on the wire. It's almost like you and I are speaking right now.
yeah.
A lot of my social contact, no, not a lot of my social contact, almost all of it comes from this online thing. I don't get out of the house much, can't afford a vehicle, couldn't afford to go anywhere, that sort of thing. The whole fixed income thing. And I'm not the only one.
Right.
So that's Nerdy Rodent says, "Wow, pen pals, forgotten about those." Yeah, you're revealing your age, sweetie. I remember that when I was in grade school, teacher would have a list of names and stuff that you want to have a pen pal, and here,
Right.
take a name. This person's in Bulgaria. Write a letter back and forth, see what happens.
Right.
But yeah, when you get the majority of your social contact from an online setting like this, it's got to be a little bit different. All parts of it. Um,
Well, it would, because a lot of the people, most of the people, if they're nearby, you have other people who are part of your life day to day, and you shared that person in your life, right? And you shared experiences together with that person. So when you see that person, there's lots more organic opportunity to have these sorts of discussions about that person and how you feel and what it means to you and how it's impacting your life going forward. You don't have those as readily or as organically if you're in an online setting. And so in some cases, maybe the only thing maybe the people who shared relationships with that person and you were both close to that person, but maybe weren't as close to each other to be able to commiserate in that way, if that makes sense.
yeah, I think so. And let's not forget the people over on the side. Does anybody else have anything they might like to say out of the side chat? Adelinda, I believe I remember you saying, was it yesterday or was it earlier than that when I had announced this, that you had gone through something like this? I mean, is there anything you'd like to ask or add, that sort of thing? Oh, Spooky, you're such a sweetie.
Spooky is a sweetie.
Of course, absolutely. Oh my. Faye says her sister has 20 pen pals. Jeez. I would never be. This is the weird thing. I would never be able to keep up with that many pals writing letters back and forth. I was never a letter writer.
Me either. I'm dyslexic, dysgraphic, so not my wheelhouse.
Ah, Spooky's all happy. You sweetness. Oh Lord. I'm trying to think if there's anything that you've got to add or anything that. Oh my, now this is interesting, Jen. You say your uncle died in Washington, didn't get to go to the funeral, and she sometimes forgets that he's dead. Now, the closure aspect out of all this, that's a very important point. What do you get from in-person memorials that you may or may not also get from over the wire? You know, how do you deal with that sort of thing?
Well, if you get, it's a very curious question because I wonder why we would get something from an in-person memorial that we wouldn't be able to get from memorializing a person in another way, aside from the fact that there's an anticipated socio-cultural context where, there's a ritual that we all go through and have accepted that that's a ritual that we do go through in order to get closure. Like A happens and then we do B, and then because we do B, that's okay. Or does A happen and we do B because we developed a need for B, and that's why we enact B? Which is an interesting question. Like, do we look at more memorials as a point of closure because we've been, through our culture, taught that that is a point of closure? Or is it a point of closure and we developed it as a society as a point of closure because it was something that's almost necessary to us? And I don't know the answer to that question. It's interesting.
Yeah, and then the other one that slammed me in the head just now, I was raised by Eastern Europeans. He was the child of immigrants. She was the grandchild of immigrants. It was that close, Eastern European. And one thing about the funerals and everything around that, there were so many people involved that you saw only at events like those. You only saw, Aunt Susie at weddings or funerals, or
Right.
Uncle Paul or whatever it was. I mean, these are names that I'm pulling. These are real names, people that I saw, maybe 8 times in my entire life, and it was always when somebody was getting married or somebody had died. So, how much of that is gained or lost via the distance thing? Because a lot of my family, or at least on her side, was at a distance in its own way. I mean, it was only Hazleton. A lot of her family was in Hazleton, Pennsylvania. So I mean, they could be in Cleveland in a couple of hours, but still spend a lot of their time elsewhere. So maybe there was more of this distance stuff than I realized there was.
Yeah, potentially. Maybe when you're having a relationship online with somebody, maybe you feel the distance potentially more because there was always distance that you felt, and it's just amplified at the point that the person's no longer available to you. Or maybe the distance, or maybe it's a compound issue and you feel it more because there aren't as many people, conglomerating together in order to, aggregate that grief and work through it as a group. Or at least you don't feel it as much like that when you don't go through those rituals where people come together and have that moment of decompression. And maybe you feel as though you don't have that sort of catharsis.
And then
as a result.
Food and getting drunk. And, well,
I'm Irish, so
everything in that family involved getting drunk. Yeah. Oh my! I remember.
I'm Irish. They used to put the body in the middle of the room and just everybody get hammered around it.
They still did that?
I'm glad that no, they don't anymore.
I was going to say,
But yeah, no, now they have a wake.
Let's have a drink to Patty. Patty, you have a drink. Oh, you can't drink? You're dead. Here, I'll drink it.
Our culture has entire songs about it. Yeah, the night that Patty Murphy died. Look that up. We sing that at every funeral.
Oh my, oh my, oh, this is wonderful. Yeah, Jen with one N. Grieving at a distance reminds me of those who've died in war and never came home.
Oh.
I wonder how those loved ones coped. Yeah, thank you for saying that, because, again, this was something I should have had in my mind, and the blonde over here just missed, color me blonde. Actually, I don't know if it's because I'm blonde or because I'm old. You do understand that when you get old, the mind is the second thing to go, right? And I forget what the first is.
Don't make me laugh. That's funny.
And this is an important thing that Wonder Lady, that Faye has to say to Jen. She says, I think that online friends are chosen family. And you, Jen, are like a sister in my heart. And what happens then? Yeah, I'm forming these familial relationships and then watching them mutate when the people involved are no more. Okay, I'm going to sound a little selfish here, but for a while there, I was wondering how everybody was going to feel, because I thought I was going to be dying a lot sooner than I had expected. And happily some people say happily, it turns out that that's not happening. Not quite as soon anyway. But then, how do those people feel when that chosen family, just one by one, goes away? And it's from Pittsburgh to Niagara Falls, or from Pittsburgh to Copenhagen, or Pittsburgh to Brisbane, that sort of thing. And that's just one, what's the word I'm looking for? Example that I'm bringing. Vesta, I love you. Vesta Freya says, blonde is not a hair color, it is more of a state of mind. Yes, it is. Oh my. Keep in mind, Freya, when I was born, I was a towhead. My hair was white for the first 3 years of my life. Then it went through blonde to brown, now through blonde again, on its way to gray.
That's where mine's headed.
So I get blonde coming and going. What we need is a TARDIS for...
I have a TARDIS.
Yay. Now, that is larger on the inside than it is on the outside, right? You can get in there and...
right now. Matcha TARDIS.
Oh, no, come on, Tony. Really? Tony Design said, this is why I make myself unlikable.
Well, he's a failure because I like Tony.
Okay. Oh my, oh my. You are extremely likable, so
Yeah, failure. Sucker.
oh my, oh my. I don't know. Yeah, guys, over on the side, if you can. I'm starting to run out of questions and such, and I know that you kind of wanted to keep things a little bit on the short side anyway,
I
because
have
I mean,
between 45 minutes to an hour before I have
yeah,
to go.
because the
I
thing,
just got
excuse me, the thing I don't want you doing is blowing out your voice and just totally going on my account or anything like that.
Oh, I
So
wanted to be able to do this with you, and I was looking forward to it. And I felt so bad yesterday when I was gonna do it too, but you were very gracious with me in understanding that I was in misery.
well, yeah, I mean
Some of
it's
it was self-inflicted, some of it was not self-inflicted, but you were incredibly gracious and understanding with me, so I appreciate you for doing
well,
that for me.
I mean. Thank you for that. It's just like, what else am I supposed to do? I mean, you're not feeling too good. It's like, okay, get plenty of rest, drink lots of fluids, and take Sativa brand analgesic. That'll get you where you're going. You people up there are so lucky. Yeah, it is legal up there, is it not?
I don't know what's the Tiva brand and Jalees, I guess.
Cannabis sativa.
Oh yeah, I could just go to the store and get some of that. I could order it and they'll deliver it to my door if I want. I could order it like a pizza. I'll just bring it right over.
Oh my, interesting from Jen. Is grieving over a death the same as grieving over a loss of friendship?
Oh,
Either in person or afar or that sort of thing.
I think that there's aspects of it that are the same from a neurochemical standpoint and from a psychological standpoint, because you're dealing with a permanent loss, like a death is a permanent loss. The loss of a friendship may feel permanent, but isn't necessarily permanent because there are opportunities later, and as much as those opportunities may not be wanted, may not be deserved, or may not ever present themselves, we're future projectors and we're pattern seekers. And also, when a person is still alive, they can be the subject of our ire, and we feel less guilty about having a subject of our ire who's alive. Like, so if we lose a friendship and we lose it because that person did something pretty awful to us, we can sometimes not really grieve it to the same extent as we would if the same exact scenario happened, only when they went home the night that scenario happened, they also passed away. You know what I mean? Like, it adds
Yeah,
another component because it's final.
and that is something that has been occurring lately. If you've been following the Twitters, and of course you
I
have,
don't know what you're talking about.
because there have been.
I'm never on Twitter, and when I am, it's always wonderful. Everything about it is an abject joy and brings my life so much meaning. It's delightful.
Oh my! Sometimes I wonder why I'm still on there, and then I remember, yeah, how would anybody know about these shows if I didn't put them out on Twitter? So what the hell. Okay, from Vesta, Shannon, sounds like you could use a hit of Buckley's in that Buckley's face.
I have some over there. I have it. I drink it right out of the bottle. I'm
Is that an Irish whiskey or what is that?
No, Buckley's is a medicine that I found out a while ago, the last time I was sick, actually, that they only sell in Canada. And the motto of the medicine is it tastes awful, but it works. And it's true. Like, it does work, but it's like the worst taste. It's like if you mixed up menthol, eucalyptus, chalk, and aspirin and put them all in like
Oh no!
consistency, but not as sticky. Like, it's really viscous. It's like, it's awful, but like it'll clear you up. Like, if things will come pouring out of you that you didn't even know were in there if you drink puppies. So I have some. I can go get it actually.
Oh
I should have
my,
something.
oh my. I am so sorry, Jen. She says, my mom had a lot of ire at my dad when he died. She was more mad than sad because he took his own life.
Oh, Jen, I'm so sorry. Oh, that's awful.
And that adds another dimension to all of this. I mean, I could probably do an entire show on that. I know that back when he was GI, he's Maddie now. Early on when I knew him, we had to call it life extension rather than suicide prevention because of how touchy YouTube was. But yeah, I'm trying to remember exactly what it was that spawned that one, but it was something that had happened that recently.
Well, hopefully they're okay.
Oh, no! Okay, I like the way Faye put it. Buckley's is medicine and it makes your crotch mentholated. However, it works.
It might, yeah.
I need some of this stuff.
Yeah, they don't. I didn't realize until just recently that they don't sell it in America. So, but you guys are missing out.
Americans are no fun. Really,
But
they're
it's
not.
it's garbage. It's bad. It tastes like there's no describing it. You have to taste it to understand what I'm talking about.
Oh my. I'm trying to think of some stuff that I actually consume to which I might be able to compare that, and I'm.
There's no compare. There's nothing. I did like. I really. I don't know if you could ever. There's nothing that I can think of. Not even an aggregate of things that could make up what Buckley's tastes like. It does taste like Buckley's. It's its own unique flavor.
I know that people think I'm weird, but I actually like the taste of quinine.
I don't know what that is.
Some people call it quinine.
I don't know if I know what that is.
It's the anti-malarial
Oh,
that you get in quinine water. So that's what gin and tonic was all about. The gin was there to make the quinine tolerable to take. It's quite bitter, but I like bitter for some reason. Okay, Tony, you be good. You have fun, and I know they're mutually exclusive. Do the best you can. Oh, so you just need to request Buckley's at the pharmacy. Okay. Okay. Yeah, well, Jen, you're the expert, aren't you? That you're right there on the border. So you do know what you can get and what you cannot get north and south. A lot of these things I've just not heard of. Coffee crisp, I don't know what that is.
Oh, you
Mr.
guys don't have coffee crisps?
If we do, I haven't had
It's like
any.
a chocolate bar.
Mr. Christie's cookies? No.
I don't have Mr. Christie's cookies.
Arrow bars? I'm not accustomed to arrow bars.
I don't have Arrow bars. Oh my god. I'm squeaking. I can't believe you guys don't have Arrow bars. Arrow bars are like this chocolate bar. And it's just like soft milk chocolate, but it's aerated, so it's filled with like bubbles, and it melts in your mouth. And you can get ones that are filled with like mint bubbles, and you break them off.
Mm.
It's really good. They come in all different flavors. And oh my gosh!
You know what I
Right.
really miss? I don't know if you guys have these anymore, or if you guys have these or not. When I was growing up, I really liked triple decker bars.
Nope, no idea what that is.
Okay, it's a rather large rectangle as far as candy bars go, and
Yeah.
thin, but there were three layers. One layer was dark chocolate, and then there was white chocolate, and then there was milk chocolate.
Oh, that all sounds really good.
And they were wonderful and yummy and tasty. And even back in the late 80s, they had disappeared. And I actually made my own knockoff.
Oh, cool.
You know, went to the store and bought the chocolate discs and bought some chocolate molds and shit like that. Went through all the trouble because I wanted a triple decker bar. You know, this is some of the shit that Clarion over here will do. Violet gum. I know about violet gum.
Oh, soap gum. Is she talking about soap gum?
I think so.
There's this purple gum that you can get, and it tastes like soap. Do you guys have Smarties? Somebody told me you guys don't have Smarties.
I believe we've got those. I
Okay.
think I've seen them. Shoot me if I'm wrong, but I know I grew up on them.
On Smarties?
Yeah, you're talking about the rolls of little sugar discs of various flavors.
No, Smarties are like what M&Ms would taste like if they didn't suck. They're like they're they're like chocolate, they're candy coated chocolate. They come in a little box.
Oh my. Okay, the Smarties I knew were yeah, they were basically glucose with color and a little bit of flavor, and you get a roll of them in plastic, almost like a roll of pennies, basically.
Rockets.
Say again?
Rockets. They're little
Okay.
candy discs that you put them in your mouth and they dissolve and they turn into like powder. They're like compressed colored sugar powder. Smarties are chocolate that's covered in candy, like round little.
Jen has the perfect description. U.S. Smarties are sweet chalk.
Yeah.
Smarties in Canada are chocolate. Okay, we got you now.
Yeah. Okay. Sweet. That is a good description. That's what rockets are. I think I have rockets
Well,
here actually. I
Necco,
actually have
Necco
Smarties.
is, yeah, Necco is something else. I know about them.
I don't know what Necco is.
Oh my, you want to talk about chalk? Necco isn't even sweet. It's like discs of calcium carbonate with various colors, and yeah.
Oh,
Um, oh wow, yeah. So we're starting to get a little bit off topic, which I guess
a little bit.
probably means that we've exhausted it for today. Oh my dear, I thank you every so much
Thank
for
you for
coming
having
by and talking about this, because like I say, with the recent events, it is important, and it's not something that's going away at any time. It's only going to become more prevalent as we become more, I'm going to say, physically isolated from each other. Where you have more and more friendships, romances, that sort of thing, happening over the wire. Um,
my
so,
boy 6,000 kilometers away. I get it.
yeah. Um, and I have to sometimes wonder, if you'll just excuse the expression, is that how you put up with him?
He's a nightmare. Non-stop nightmare. It's unbelievable. No, I'm pretty lucky. It's pretty
And
awesome.
you two are just the sweetest couple. You really are. And I mean, physical proximity. How many times a year do you get to see each other in the same room? Jeez.
When we're lucky, 4 times a year. When we're lucky, yeah. I haven't seen him since the end of August, and I won't see him again until December. And then after that, I probably won't see him again until whenever Faithless Forum is. And then he's usually here for 3 weeks in the summer. So at least 3 times in the next calendar year, I'll see him. Hopefully more if we can afford it. It's expensive, but
Yeah, I can imagine.
what's a kilometer? Oh God, I weep. I weep for the metric system.
There is actually here in the U.S. a stretch of highway that is marked off entirely in kilometers, no mile posts or anything like that. It's a stretch of, is it I-10 from Tucson to Nogales in
Oh,
Arizona, and I
cool.
was I was amazed when my wife and I took a trip down there. It was around Thanksgiving holiday. I think it was like 84 or 83, something like that. And even back then, it was marked off in kilometers and known as the only highway in the U.S. that had that.
Cool.
Um, yeah, and for those who are not familiar, a kilometer is 5/8 of a mile, almost exactly. or maybe it is exactly, I forget. Um, but yeah, it's yeah. So you know what's happening there with that whole long distance thing going on, and it's yeah. There was somebody who kind of told me that she doesn't do long distance very well, and it's like, oh shit. She also doesn't do age caps very well. Oh, gee, who could we be talking about?
Can't imagine.
I don't know, man. It's I think we're probably the most famous couple that's not a couple on the internet. I don't know. I can always hope. I really can. Oh, from Vesta. Shannon, my husband, and I did the long distance thing for 3 years before we got married in 1990. Okay. Well, my most recent ex, we started out long distance. She was in northern New Jersey. If you're familiar with Warren County, it's not the area up against New York City. It's on the other side of northern New Jersey, and here I am in Pittsburgh. But we kind of remedied that quickly. It only took a few months for us to. She came out here. Came out here to stay for about 10 days. 6 months later, she went back and picked up her stuff and brought it out. She's still here, even though we're not together anymore. We split up 10 years ago. But you didn't have a long distance breakup in that case. But okay. Anyway, I do want to thank you extremely, extremely very much for coming on out and for having this discussion. You are the big sweetie as far as that goes, and that's an accolade I don't distribute lightly. And just for the heck of it, what are you going to be up to in the near future?
I have a YouTube channel. It's called Shannon Q. I'm currently doing a video on why religious belief isn't a mental illness. It's going to probably piss off everyone I know, so I'm excited about that.
Oh, yes. Oh, I am really looking forward to that one.
I've got lots of tabs open on my desk right now. I've been just reading research for the past 3 to 4 weeks. It's not like when I do videos, people are always like, when's it coming out? When's it coming out? But I have a weird obsession with making sure that I'm, standing on solid footing before I say stuff. And even then, it's still, it can be a crapshoot. You can get things wrong. So
right.
I get a little obsessive about making sure that I cross all my T's and dot all my I's. So
I know that feeling.
A lot of research, so I don't put out videos as often as many other people do for that, weirdo. So
yeah, Kate takes issue with me over the same sort of thing. I like to back everything up and dot all the T's and cross all the I's, as you say, and God, that takes a lot of work.
It sure does. I mean, I think there's a very valuable place for commentary, but it's just not. I come from an academic background, so when I'm doing research, I'm used to making my annotated bibliography and then figuring out the layout and outline of the things that I need to touch and what research goes where and building all those pieces. Every video I do is essentially like a verbal presentation of a research paper. Anyway.
Yeah, Jen, agreed. Very much agreed. It does take a long time to put out quality videos, and maybe it sounds like I'm patting myself on the back. I don't know, but it's one of the reasons I haven't put out very many scripted videos.
It takes a long time.
Yeah. I think it's been close to a year since I put out a scripted video of any import.
Maybe one day I'll put out a quality video. Maybe it'll be this one. Maybe that will be the one I do. I'm working on it.
Well,
that's what I'm doing.
Take it from an expert in these things. Jen says Shannon's stuff is definitely not fluff.
Oh, she'd fucking tell me if it was. I know that for a fact. She doesn't.
Oh yeah.
So thank you, Jen. I appreciate it. I know that you wouldn't tell me if it was. I appreciate that. That means a lot. Thank you.
I like this. Thank you, Undead Meowth. How to learn the metric system if you live in the U.S. 1 gram of weed is $10. 7 grams is a quarter ounce. And let's see, an O is 28 grams, or, oh, that must mean an ounce, or $280. Oh, my word. Is that what they want for this stuff anymore? You can tell it's been a long time. You can tell it's been a long time since I've had any of that. Been several years. I was offered some recently, and I was afraid to have it because I quit smoking 14 months ago.
Oh,
And
congratulations.
yay.
That is
And
not easy.
it's not that I don't have cravings or anything like that, but I've stayed away for a year and 2 months. And I was afraid that, okay, if I'm going to smoke this stuff, am I going to cough my lungs out? Or am I going to be many much tempted to go back to smoking?
Yeah.
And I didn't like the idea of either one of them. So it's, what can I tell you? And this is the unfortunate thing, is that grass was the best analgesic I've found when my back goes out.
Oh.
Because I've got a bad back, five slip discs. What is it? C5, C6, C6, C7, L3, L4, L4, L5, L5, S1.
Oh gosh.
They haven't given me a hard time in quite a few years, and I'm happy about that. But when they do,
Oh yeah.
anyway, oh God, it's already past the top of the hour. So let me thank you, Vinny, very many much again.
Thank you.
And everybody, I want to thank everyone who is here and everyone who is not here. And I guess what I will say is thanks a lot, troops. See you on the other side.